interesting because it's put together in both talking about issues of sexuality and also talking issues of gender. And for me, it's intriguing to see how those get put together or how they're not put together. My understanding is fairly basic, that God created humankind male and female. And so we have within us these two elements that exist and coexist in all their wonderfulness. And it always surprised me. I guess I've ascribed to, long ago, William Booth. Made the comment, in a war against someone who hates you, why would you tie one arm behind your back? And so I've always had that sense that it's foolishness for us to simply say women cannot be allowed to be involved in certain ministries. And I would go back to Jesus' own teaching about the basic sense of we are not to be like the Gentiles. We do not lord it over one each other. We do not have authority and understanding, but rather we serve as servants in mission and in ministry together. I brought that when I came in 1990. By and large, it was well received. Not always warmly, but what was fascinating is we're wonderfully pragmatic in Mennonite church circles. We needed to make a theological case for it. We needed to show that this made sense biblically. But also there was that sense that if you bring to a church a really amazing individual, male or female, makes no difference. If you bring an amazing individual, our churches are pragmatic enough to say, I want that person. And so we were able to place, through church ministries over those years, a number of women into key places in ministry in the life of our conference. And that was really exciting to me. I was trying to jot down the other day, and I'm bringing a note here, just who during that time had come along. Anna Dick with the Japanese church, Bev and Zee Bredikop working together over at Peace with Youth, Karen Martin Zimmerly, who is around here and now works with Mennonite Church Canada, April Yamasaki, Ingrid Schultz, Karen Heidelberg Thiessen. It was a good beginning, and I trust is one that's continued over the years since I've been away from the conference, but anticipate that there's still a depth of women in ministry that have made a huge difference. But this idea of overcoming some of the theological inertia that was there and making a biblical case for it. Also looking at some of the cultural issues that were there from the early 90s, not so much now, but this gap that existed between church and culture. And that recognition that we're beyond all those things, very pragmatic people. And when we find gifted people the Lord has blessed, we want them to be part of mission and ministry. The second part of that question dealt not so much with gender issues, but rather with sexual issues, sexual orientation, how do we deal with that, how do we function with that. That was a really hard nut. It still is. Now, I've been away, as I say, for 7 years, so I'm not sure what's happened in the BC circles or in Mennonite Church Canada circles for that regard. I know in the denomination I'm working with now, in Mennonite Brethren circles, they struggle both with women in ministry and also with sexual orientation issues. One of the things I found both there and with Mennonite Church is deciding not to decide is a decision. And so Mennonite Brethren right now are going through that struggle to a certain degree by saying each church decides for women in ministry. That decision has really not pleased much of anyone in the course of that. And they'll have to make other decisions down the road. But it was a decision in itself which has caused ambiguity and struggle and tension. I think some of the decisions made around our sexuality, orientation, practice, lifestyle, that again has caused a certain amount of ambiguity and tension for people. And I was fairly forceful and strong in some of my comments back then. I felt it was a bit disingenuous, and I still think that, to sort of begin dialogue with a group, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, and say, we want to sit and we want to talk. It's one thing to have that conversation, and it's another thing to come already pretty much knowing where your denomination's at and the expectations of that denomination. And I made the case several times, both in BC and Mennonite Church Canada, that it seemed unfair to me to say we want to have this dialogue, but we kind of know where it's going. A number of times I was told simply that both BC and Mennonite Church Canada would not ever go there to that place. Well, that means that dialogue has to look different in terms of the conversation. I don't know where it's gone since then. I hope there's been some more light than heat. For me, it was an interesting time. There were a number of resolutions that were brought to the floor, discussed, debated, sometimes passed, in terms of what MCBC was going to do. I think it's one that still probably is a struggle for us in our churches here. We have that dual pull the pull that says we want to abide by our understanding of Scripture and what it means to be faithful people living for Christ, and that need also to want no one left behind and want to be able to have everyone included in the life of the body. And those pull at each other sometimes. And to be able to do that, even in the congregation I'm in now, is difficult sometimes, that we have a number of gay people there that are participants involved in the life of the church, but yet there are strictures and limitations. And how do you do that with integrity? It's a toughie. And so I wish MCBC God's best as they struggle through that one.